Hello everybody, thank you for joining us for today's presentation, Reverse Engineer Your Job Search with Kelly Struder. My name is Greg Olston, I'm with IV Exec, and I'll be moderating the session today. So I would like to take a moment to briefly introduce our presenter, Kelly Struder. Kelly has been transforming careers for ambitious professionals and executives at Fortune 500 companies, startups, and everything in between. Her services help people clearly define their ideal career path, obtain the skills and strategies to obtain their dream job, and create a strong personal brand that will allow them to be totally authentic, confident, and in control of their career. Prior to starting her own coaching business, Kelly was a successful leader, recruiter, and consultant at some of the world's best companies, including Google, Salesforce.com, Sapient, and Accenture. So with that, I would like to now hand the presentation over to Kelly.
Thank you so much, Greg. I am thrilled to be here and to be giving this webinar today. It's one of my favorite subjects and a super important one. So thank you all for joining me. So without further ado, let's just go ahead and jump right in. So what are you going to learn in this webinar? Here are the three big things that I hope that you get out of it. The most important thing that you need to do before embarking on your job search, or maybe even having a conversation with your manager, your boss, about really where you want to take your career next. Why looking or asking for a job you're qualified for is a big mistake. And my critical 5-step exercise for getting that career transition advancement clarity that will really get you the job you want next. So who is this webinar for? In my opinion, this is great for a pretty wide range of people. It's great for anyone looking for a new job right now, one that is going to be more challenging, engaging, fulfilling, more interesting, really going to let you shine. For anyone who's feeling stuck in neutral in their career, maybe your career's kind of stalled out a bit and you're not as engaged, you may be a little bored, and you're really jonesing for something else, something bigger, something more exciting. It's great for those who want to become the creator of their own career path rather than waiting for what comes your way or gets offered to you, really sort of setting the direction. And anyone wanting to take their career in a new direction altogether, maybe transition into a different track, try something else on because what you're doing doesn't feel like the right track for you. So if that sounds like you, any or all of these things, then you are in the right place. Okay, so a little bit about me, a little bit of my background. Greg did a great job of giving you the high level, but I think it's interesting for you to hear a little bit about my story so that it tells you how I came to come up with this like reversing your job search approach. I really didn't know what the heck I wanted to do when I graduated from UCLA. I decided to move to Boston on a little bit of an impulsive whim. I didn't even have a job lined up, and I just kind of showed up in town and thought, okay, what should I do? I had narrowed out the things that I didn't want to do, but I hadn't narrowed in onto the things that I did want to do. So I literally stumbled and fell into recruiting by accident, and luckily for me, it was a pretty good match for my skills and talents, and I really enjoyed it. It was a lot of fun. So I lucked out, basically. And I did that for about 5 or 6 years until I got laid off in the dot-com bust, and no one wanted a recruiter. I was a little bit burnt out on it, and so I was back to, what do I do now? And I actually decided to follow my original sort of teenage dream job of being a film producer, and I moved down to LA to work in Hollywood. And this was probably the first time, though, in my life that I was really clear on what I was doing and why I was doing it. And I looked into what the path would be. It'd start with working for an agent, a literary agent, then move on to work for a producer and start developing scripts and work your way up that way. So at this point in my life, I was very clear. I kept telling everybody what I wanted and was making steps towards that. And I was amazed at how quickly I was moving from one step to the next and actually doing it faster than some of my peers. And it really kind of hit me that when you really know what you want and you tell people, things just start to open up. And so that was really illuminating for me. However, I didn't enjoy working in the film business as much as I thought I would. It wasn't a really great match for my own values and what mattered to me. So I left the film business and again was sort of like, now what? And I fell into a great opportunity back at Google, where I ended up working for 5.5 years. And I wasn't clear on what I was doing. I was sort of relying on my past experience, and they needed someone like me. And I had a lot of great experiences there, but I wasn't really in control of directing where my career was going. And after 5.5 years, I felt kind of stuck, like I was in neutral. I wasn't really moving somewhere, and I wanted more challenge and wasn't sure if I would find what I was looking for within Google. So I started looking outside and ended up in an interesting situation where I was basically designing a job with Salesforce.com that really fit what I wanted to do and their needs, and I knew where I could have an impact and where I'd be stretched. And lo and behold, when I was very clear on what I wanted, I got the job, and it was easy to beat out other candidates. So I did that for a little over a year, and while it was an amazing experience and I was really challenged and stretched, it wasn't the right culture fit for me, and I think I was really sort of yearning for something else. And that's really the point where I decided to start my own business, and I got laser focused on what I wanted to do and the impact that I wanted to have. And in the last 2.5 years since I've been doing that, I've never been happier or more fulfilled in my career, and I really feel more successful than I ever have. So that's a little bit about my story and what brought me to sharing with you my philosophy on how to really advance your career and find the job you ideally want. Okay, so what do most people do when they start a job search? I see people scouring job postings to see what's out there, seeing what they can fit themselves into, what's available. Makes sense, but it's also more of an approach of what's available instead of what do I want. They're looking for jobs they are qualified for. It makes sense, right? Of course you would look for jobs that you're qualified for. Here's the problem with that. When you're qualified for a job, you're going to be bored in 6 months. And you're going to be asking, what's next? You're going to become a management problem because they want you to take the job on, do great work, and then keep doing it for a long time. And that just doesn't work for us. We want to be stretched. We want to be challenged. So you want to be looking for a job from the get-go that is going to stretch you. And it's also an opportunity for them to see, the potential hiring manager to see that they want someone who's going to stretch and grow. You're going to stick around longer. You're going to be, really growing into the position and not necessarily saying what's next for me in 6 months. I also see people just start applying for jobs online. So I think most of the people on this call right now are pretty experienced and have probably more than 10 years of job experience. You should not be applying for jobs online. Unless you are 100% qualified, they're not going to call you. And as I just mentioned before, you don't want to be 100% qualified. It really is about having conversations, getting referred, using your network, doing everything that you can to get in front of somebody and really show them what you've got and why you would be worth taking a risk on. Yeah, so what I mentioned before, no more cover letters, but most people agonize over what do I put in it, how do I show that I can really take on this job I haven't quite done before. Don't need to be doing that. And I right here go to networking events because networking events seem like the popular thing to do, I'll go tell people that I'm looking for a job. But if you aren't clear on exactly what you want, those networking events could backfire on you. So I would put it off until you've done the next step that I'm going to talk about. And really, most people don't spend enough time thinking about what am I looking for? How am I going to answer that question? What is my elevator pitch? So it's sort of like start the job search before you're ready is what I see most people doing, and it extends your job search and makes it much more difficult. So the typical result of taking that approach is an uninspiring job search that may end up getting you a job you don't really want and you were probably overqualified for. And as I mentioned before, that's when boredom and disengagement sets in 6 months, and you might wonder, why did I go through all of this hassle of looking for a new job only to be back right where I started. So I've mentioned the 70% qualified, sort of my 70% principle of like, you want to have 30% of the job that you're looking for be something that you haven't quite done before, that would be a stretch for you, that would challenge you in a way that is really exciting to you. So it's like where you're headed next. It's not where you are now. And the other key thing is that you want a job that's going to play to your talents as much as, if not even more so, than your skills and experience and knowledge. I find that a lot of people fall back on and rely on selling their skills and knowledge and experience, all those things that you've acquired over time, and they're not as clear on what are they naturally talented at, what comes effortlessly and easy to them that no one could teach them. That is what is going to make it possible for you to sell a potential employer on that 30% that you haven't done yet, that you aren't totally qualified for. That's how you're going to bridge the gap, is showing what comes naturally to you, the impact that you can have because of it, examples that really highlight when you've used these talents. And so they're going to be less nervous about you taking on a role that's a bit of a stretch for you, because you can get the skills and knowledge and experience. That's actually the easy part. You can't pick up talents. You either have them or you don't. So get super clear on what those are. One way you can do that, a simple, fast way, is to buy StrengthsFinder 2.0 and take the assessment, really look through it, and think about how this has shown up in your career. How do you actually use these? These are talents that this identifies. And think of examples. Think about how you could have them used, valued, and appreciated more in your next role. And I think that you want to look for a job that scares you a little, that's going to push you really and stretch you to your growing edge. If you're not a little nervous about the job, like, oh my God, on day one when I show up, am I going to know what to do? I'm a little nervous and scared about that. I hope I can prove myself. Like, you are on the right track. It's sort of this idea that when we get to be the go-to expert on something, when everyone's coming to us because we have all the answers and we really know how to do something well, that should be the signal to you that it's time to get outside your comfort zone and try something you haven't done before and get back into like a beginner mindset. When we go through that cycle of beginner to expert and back again, that's what keeps us engaged and excited and feel like we're really growing and prospering and successful. So be a little scared, be a little nervous. That's a good sign. All right, so I believe that the way to get super clear on what you want and really go after the job that speaks to you and will excite you and scare you just a little, that you'll only be 70% qualified for, is that you've got to write your own ideal job description. So you've got employers out there writing job descriptions. Why wouldn't you write one that actually lays out everything that you would want to see out there and to be interviewed for and get? So it's really helping you get focused on what you want. So when you do go to networking events or talk to family or friends or whomever, they're going to be really clear on what you want. So I'm going to walk you through the 5 steps for doing that. It's a lot like you would see on a job description that's posted on a website. So you've got the company description, although the one that you're going to write up is going to be much more lengthy than what you see on a typical job posting. So I'm going to take you through all the questions that you should be asking yourself about your ideal company to the point where you can actually visualize working there. It's that clear. And then contributions and impact. This is where it's a little different than what you would see on a job posting, and I'll explain a little bit more about what that is. Obviously, the responsibilities that you would have in the role. What are the qualifications, the requirements of the ideal candidate for this? What would the background and experience and education look like? It's a way to also see where do you actually stack up against your own ideal job description in terms of requirements and qualifications. And then I save job title for last, and I will explain more why that's the 5th part of this ideal job description. Okay, so before I jump into each of those, There's one rule of engagement that I want you to make your mantra as you do this exercise on your own. You're not allowed to say, I don't know. I don't know what responsibilities I want. I don't know what kind of company I want to work for. I don't know what the requirements would be. The reason I'm saying that I want you to take that out of your vocabulary is because you do know. You do have these answers inside of you. There's probably a part of you that's just a little bit afraid to own it, to really look in there and see, what do I want? So if you hear yourself saying, I don't know, you can stop and say, okay, sure I do. Well, what do I know at this point? Or what do I not know? And then look at the opposite. But I really, really want to emphasize this, because this is how you can get yourself stuck if you tell yourself that you don't know, and it's simply not true. So that's one thing I would love for you to put like on a post-it note when you're doing this exercise, with a big X through it. All right, there's a lot on this slide, but I wanted to give you a really good sense of all the questions that I would want you to ask yourself and capture around this company that you would ideally like to work for. Now, I hear all the time from my clients that, well, I might want to work for lots of different types of companies. Like, this is really hard for me to write up. Totally get that. The point here is for you to write up your ideal company. That doesn't mean that it's the only type of company that you should consider or that you would ever work for, but it's giving you a clear picture of what you truly want so that you can start to attract things that are closer to it. And it's really helping you sort of set the stage for where you want to look and where you want to point your attention to. So here are just some great questions you could be asking yourself, right? How many employees? Like, how big is this company that I want to work for? Is it local, national? Is it global? Is it a small company, a medium-sized company, a big company? I often like to think, like, what size fish do you want to be in what size pond? And the pond size may give you an idea of what kind of company size would be a really great fit for you. So if you've worked at a huge company before and it felt impersonal and you want to be in a place that feels more like family, you might be better off at a smaller company. Or maybe you want to work for a large company but in a satellite office where it feels more intimate. So you think through how the size affects you. I even have people think about, well, what size college did you go to? What did you like about that? What did you not like about that? Like, there's probably a reason you chose a college that was that size, and you can even look there, or even thinking about the size of your high school and how did that feel to you might give you a good indication. Is it a public, private, or pre-IPO company? Does that matter to you? Maybe it doesn't, but if it does, put it down. Maybe it's important to know what industry they're in because you really want to target a specific industry. Maybe not. What about growth rate? So do you want a company that has been around for 15 plus years and is really solid, but maybe they're not growing super fast, but that feels good to you? It's really solid and secure, or at a company that is more like a startup and they're in hyper growth mode and there's lots of change, and maybe even also around risk orientation. Then it's really thinking about, what does it look and feel like to work at this place? Where would it be located? I want you to close your eyes even and imagine getting up in the morning and getting dressed, and what are you wearing to go to work, and what does your commute look like? When you walk in the building, like, what would this building look like? What color are the walls? How are the desks arranged? Where's your desk? Do you have an office that you close the door? Are you an open area? Are you working from home? What do you picture if you just really sink into it and imagine what feels good to you and really capture all of these elements? What time are you getting to work? Are there other people there? Are you the first to arrive? Are you the last to arrive? And maybe even when you leave the office at the end of the day, what time is it? What are you going to do next? Are you, what does your day look like because you work at this company? I even think it's important to look at why is this company in business, this ideal company of yours? What is their mission? What kind of impact are they wanting to make in the world? What do they care about? Is that, and obviously in your ideal company description, they would care about what you care about. And think about the leadership team. What qualities would the CEO and the C-level folks on that team have? Maybe you're on that leadership bench. Who do you want to be working with? What are their qualities? What do they value and care about? And that obviously speaks to culture, describing how decisions are made, what they're based around, what's sort of like the language. What is it a work hard, play hard place, or is it more of like nose to the grindstone, go home and have your personal life and get out of there by 5? And also just what kind of people are you there working with? Who are your colleagues? Who do they hire? What are their backgrounds like? So you can see you can go really deep with the company description, and the more deep you go, the more it starts to feel like a real place, like this exists, and I guarantee you something like it does. So that's company description. I have one quick story. I had a client, she's doing amazing on her own now, that came to me already halfway into her job search. And so we worked together on a whole bunch of things, identifying her talents and her values, and then we got into this ideal job description. And she got really deep into the ideal company she wanted to work for. And she came back to me only about 6 weeks later and said, oh my gosh, like once I created this ideal job description, I was getting, and putting it out there, I was getting like so many interviews. It was almost becoming a full-time job just interviewing. And there were a bunch of jobs that were at great companies, but they didn't really fit what was on my ideal job description as far as the role. Like I was overqualified, and the company description actually didn't fit. It wasn't the kind of culture or the commute. It was like way too far. And this one company kept calling her and begging her to come interview, but she, they were not located in a place that she thought she wanted to work. She hadn't thought of that company, but they kept saying like, come on, we really think you'd be interested in this role. Well, lo and behold, throughout the interview process, she started to co-create this opportunity with them, and she realized that the commute was a lot shorter than she thought it was. And when she walked up to the building and walked into it, she said to me, Kelly, I couldn't believe it. It was exactly what I envisioned in my mind. And I'm now working there, and it's the best job I've ever had. I never would have imagined it would have been at this place and doing this exact role, but it was so close, I can't believe it. This really works. So that's, one compelling reason why you might want to give this a shot. So contributions and impact was the next critical step. I think most people skip over this, and it's major. This is really about, why are you even working? Like, what do you care about in your work? What do you want to do that's really going to make a difference? What is the legacy that you would want to maybe leave behind at your next company? Like really what matters at the end of the day, or life. So this is looking at the 30,000 foot level. This is more about your purpose. And I wanted to give you a few examples of some different ones that my clients had come up with that really meant something to them. So here are a few. The first one was, one of my clients wanted their ultimate goal and why they're showing up to work and what gets them out of the bed in the morning is to improve human connectivity and productivity. So as long as they are engaged in some form of making that happen or making that possible, it's going to keep them wanting to go to work and more connected to what they're doing and more fulfilled. One person said, want everyone to feel as engaged and passionate about their work as I do. Inspire excellence. And a third person, creating something tangible that changes the course of the way people do business. And I can speak to all three of my clients who put that. When I look at the jobs they ended up getting or creating in their current work environment, and I ask them, like, are you really focused on, hitting your impact and contributions and the purpose that you want to make? And they're like, absolutely, absolutely. And they're so fired up about their jobs. So don't skip this step. You may only need to have 1 or 2 bullet points on your ideal job description related to this. Like, really boil it down to what matters for you. And this is really your why, like why you want this next job. It's not just I want this next job because I want to be more successful and it makes sense on my path. It's more compelling when you can really talk about what drives you to want to do it. People will assume that you're going to be more loyal and more engaged in the work, and they absolutely want that, and you want that. So responsibilities, this is pretty straightforward. You know, you want to take the opportunity to really write down what do you want to be responsible for. So maybe to start out, just brainstorm everything that you can think of, even like ridiculous things like, I want to run the whole marketing department, and maybe you haven't done anything close to that. But, you know, kind of spit everything up at first, and it might start out a little bit general, but then I want you to make it more and more specific. So I wrote here, yeah, what would you ideally like to be responsible for? So if you're applying that 70% rule of what you are qualified for and 30% is a stretch, sometimes it can help to put what you're qualified for first and then like turn up the volume on that. So if you're an individual contributor and you really want to manage a team but you haven't done it before, maybe a responsibility on your list would be manage a team of 5 people and oversee, you know, ... And you might think, who's going to hire me to do that? I haven't managed before. But again, if you are clear on your talents and you can match that up with your skills, experience, and knowledge, someone will take a chance on you because they'll see that fire and that passion for you really wanting to stretch yourself and grow, and you are going to like really step up to your own bar. So it's like raising the bar on yourself and making it a little bit nerve-wracking, a little bit scary. The other thing I would really keep in mind is your first 3 responsibilities should be about 80% of the job you will actually be doing. And whenever you look at a job posting out there, that's what you should be looking and noticing too, that whatever the first 3 things are, that is the majority of the job. The rest below are the other 20% that get sprinkled in. So I would encourage you to do the same on your ideal job description. Those first 3 would be like the lion's share of what you're going to be focused on. So sometimes it can be hard to get started on this, and now I think it's okay to go out there and look at some job descriptions if you're feeling really stuck, and maybe even just like copy and paste certain bullet points that you see on a job description that really speak to you. Go, yeah, I like that, I like that. Grab it, put it on yours, you can edit it. Change it up a little bit to really speak to exactly what you want to do. But this can be a great way to like get you off of like the blank page of what responsibilities do I want to have. So why do I have requirements on this job description? Well, there's a good reason. You want to really look at the responsibilities, this job that you've just created, and think, well, who would they hire? Who would someone hire to do this job? And start to imagine what their background and experience and education, hard skills and soft skills would be, so you can see how you measure up. Like, okay, maybe you actually came up with a job that's for MBA. It's, you know, usually MBAs do it, and you don't have one. Well, put that on there anyway. You know, BA required, MBA preferred, and think about, okay, so what do I have maybe to offer that an MBA doesn't? It's an opportunity to see what gaps you have as well as where you match up. So you want to, again, go back to those talents for those gaps and start to see where have I actually had enough experience in my life that would enable me to do this job that I haven't quite done before. And so that's why I have you focus on writing a list of the requirements. You might find that you're a lot more qualified for the job than you thought, and again, you don't want to be an exact fit for the job. And I can guarantee you that 90% of the time, or maybe 80% of the time, companies aren't hiring someone who fits all of those requirements anyway. So we don't want to take them too seriously even when we look at job postings. They're suggestions, they're a good idea, but they're still going to hire the person that they want to work with, that inspire them, that know what they want, that are confident, and also have skills, experience, and knowledge. They don't have to be a perfect fit to get the job. So the job title, the last thing. So I'd save this for last because what I started noticing is that when my clients were starting out with the job title, they started to kind of put themselves in a box of having everything then fit the job title. And it really limited their creativity. And so I'm like, wow, let's just forget about the job title until the end. And then even create your own job title. It doesn't have to be one that is a traditional one out there, like product manager or VP of marketing. It could be something that you just feel like, when I read this job, this is what I would call it. I had one client who wrote up her job description. She'd been in sales and advertising sales and digital media for a long time, and when she really looked at where she wanted to go, what she wanted to do, she's like, this is a VP of growth role. Like, I like the sound of that. And the coolest thing is that she then started going out and looking at jobs that might have the title growth in it, and found that there were a whole bunch out there. She just never thought to look for it before until she came up with it herself. So it can be a much more inspiring thing for you to say this for last and really give it whatever title you want, like Chief Creativity Officer, if that's what you feel like you would want to call it. And the other cool part is when you do go out and talk to people about what you do want, and you use maybe even a non-conventional job title, it gets them intrigued. It has them hooked. It has them wanting to know more. Like, well, what is that exactly? That's really interesting. So please put off creating your job title until after you've done all those other steps. So that is essentially what an ideal job description would look like. And why is this so important? Ultimately, it becomes important for your job search, or even as you're thinking about advancing your career within your current company, or talking to your manager when they're saying like, well, what's next for you? Where do you want to go? It's a benchmark. So if you are job hunting, you can start looking around at jobs and seeing, how does this match up with my ideal job description? If it's not even 50% of it, do you want to waste your time going after those jobs? Probably not. It may not be where you want to put your focus. And if a job is, 80% or even 90%, then you're going to be pretty excited, and that's where you're going to want to really put your effort. Another thing is, and you've probably heard this before, somewhat like the law of attraction, but what you put your focus on is what you tend to attract. As Rumi, the famous philosopher, once said, what you seek is seeking you. So when you have this ideal job description, and once you've written it, I would recommend that you review it and look at it regularly. Look at it before you even go into an interview. Look at it before you go in and talk to your manager. Maybe even bring it in with you to talk with your manager. Maybe don't bring in the company description part if you're not looking to switch companies, but even doing the company description part, if you're not moving onto a new company, it might help you figure out what group you would want to work in, or what group you want to help cultivate or grow. So I've noticed that when I've met people who are looking for something new, and I ask them what they're looking for, when they're really broad, or they're not very specific and they are open to too many things, I don't know how to help them, and I don't tend to help them. I go, well, good luck, let me know how that goes. But when someone's really clear, I want to get in there and figure out how I can help them get that. Clarity is everything, and the confidence that goes with the clarity is also really inspiring. People want to help confident people. Clarity inspires confidence. Confidence inspires people wanting to open doors for you, make introductions, and make referrals, brainstorm with you, think about companies that you could consider, where opportunities might lie. So that is really a massive, massive benefit, and it also makes a job search or looking for something new feel a lot easier, like it has more flow. And I wrote here changes the conversation in an interview, because I have seen this happen with many of my clients. It happened for me when I went to interview with Salesforce. When you're really clear on what you want, you might end up interviewing or being considered for a job that's, say, 70% of what's on your ideal job description. Well, the more you find out about the opportunity and what are their challenges, and get to know them, you have an opportunity to also say, hey, have you thought about making this part of the role? or bringing this element in, and here's how I would approach that, and here's the impact that I think it would make if maybe you possibly changed up even the description of this role a bit, and you can get into a co-creation of a whole new job description that may end up looking almost exactly like your ideal job. It happened for me. It's happened for many of my clients. In fact, the one that comes to mind is this guy who was a manager at a consulting firm. It's actually an accounting, a big accounting firm, beg your pardon. And he really wanted to get out of more of the consulting realm of things and switch gears a bit, and wanted to use some more of his talents. Some of his talents were just not needed or valued or appreciated in his current role. So he wrote up his ideal job description, started going out onto his job search, and he ended up creating this job with his future employer that was exactly like his ideal job and not the one they originally posted. So he went from being a manager to a VP at this new company and making more money doing exactly what he wanted. And he was floored. He's like, I can't believe this works so well. And I know it works. It is really life-changing in terms of how you can approach advancing your career and moving it up to the next level. So now what do you do that you have your ideal job description? Well, now you can update your resume. You want to actually be the ideal candidate for your own ideal job and have that show up in your resume. So think about the story you're telling and who are you and where are you headed in your career. I really think it's important to put in that summary at the top, like, what are you looking to do next? What do you want to be hired to do? You already know. You wrote your ideal job description. Let them know where you're headed and really kind of create a story that's going to show how you are ready for that next opportunity, that, you know, those talents are really popping, the type of impact that you want to have, and all the things that you don't really want to ever do again. Take it off your resume. Don't tell that story. It's going to keep you attracting jobs that you've already done and don't want. It will also, having this ideal job description, help you craft your elevator pitch. Now you know what to tell people you're looking for. And again, that confidence and clarity just has the doors flying open and opportunities starting to like magically show up. And then you want to start telling everyone what you're looking for. The person that you end up engaging in random conversation with at the coffee shop, friends and family, colleagues, whatever is obviously appropriate if you're currently employed. And you want to get it out there. Like, let the universe know what you're looking for so that, you know, get that focus going, really start magnetizing and attracting it. These are the results that you can expect when you take the time to do this. As I mentioned before, people will feel compelled to help you with your job search. If you're not clear, they will not help you, and they probably won't. They'll just sort of, okay, good luck, keep me posted. I really have seen that the likelihood of obtaining your ideal job and at your ideal company will go up by tenfold. This is a game changer. And as I mentioned, your job search and asking for what you want will be less stressful. You will feel more confident. And finally, this clarity is so rare in the job, you know, candidates that I interviewed. I mean, I can tell you that probably 29 out of 30 people I interviewed couldn't clearly articulate what they wanted next in their career and why they wanted this particular position. And even the ones that were qualified weren't that compelling to me if they didn't know why they wanted it or how they wanted to stretch and where were they headed. The ones that did, that were really authentic about it, were so much more compelling, and I ended up taking a chance on them and convincing a lot of other people to do the same in my companies. So it really kind of takes some of that burden off of you of having to be the most qualified candidate. It's not the only way to get a job is by being qualified. It's actually having clarity and authenticity in what you want and who you are. So, if there's only one thing that you take away from this webinar today, I want you to know that if you don't know what you want, no one else will either, and they won't know how to help you. It's not someone else's responsibility to figure out where you fit or where your career should go next. That is your job. I really, really want for you to know what you want and to go out and ask for it. It's really, dare I say, sexy when someone knows what they want. And it's so compelling. And that's what I really want you to take away from this. So, you know, attempt this, try it as much as you can. You may even want to partner up with somebody, have them ask you questions so you can kind of pull out the answers if you're struggling with it. I obviously can help you with it if it's something that you're really struggling with. But I trust that if you apply this process, you will absolutely see a change in what you attract and what you obtain. So that is how I recommend you reverse your job search, reverse engineer your job search. So I'm going to take questions, but first I just wanted to share a couple of things. One is just a little bit about what I do. There's a bunch of different areas that I focus on. Primarily, I help a lot of people who are feeling stuck in their career, maybe like you are, and help them get really clear on all of the different elements of them. What do they really want? The ideal job description being one part of that. And then I also do help people with the job search strategy pieces, the tactical elements of how to create an amazing resume, preparing for interviews, negotiating the offer, LinkedIn, all of that. And I also am a really big believer that, you know, your career style is a lot of what your personal brand is, and getting more authenticity, more confidence and clarity on what you want the world to experience, your career world, and that you can absolutely be your highest performing self and be fulfilled at the same time and tremendously successful. And also I help people out a little bit on the image consulting side. So how you're actually showing up without saying a word, and is that matching the rest of you. And I wanted to also offer you my ideal job description worksheet so that you will have something. If you didn't get all of these notes down from the webinar today, you can hop over to my website at kellystruder.com/idealjd and give me your name and email address, and I will send you my worksheet so that you can start playing with it right away. So, Greg, do we have any questions?
Yes, we sure do. All right, so we've received quite a few already from a few people who are asking, when you do build this job description, is this something that you share with your network? Do you hand it out to people? Do you share it with hiring managers, recruiters? Do you even use it to build out your LinkedIn profile, for example?
Okay, so if I understand the question correctly, it's like once you've got your ideal job description written, you know, who do you share it with and how do you share it with them? So I see this as more of a tool for you to use to then create that amazing and powerful resume and that LinkedIn profile and that elevator pitch so that you can really express yourself easily, confidently, and clearly to other people. However, I think it might be interesting, maybe towards the the end of or even in the middle of an interview process, to say, hey, I want to share something with you, especially if you feel like there's a lot of connection, there's a lot of things that are matching up. They might be really amazed that you've really thought about this. This is not just any job that you're looking for. And I think it could be a very interesting conversation. I also think it would absolutely benefit you to bring it in and talk to your manager about it, especially if you're looking to see what's next. Maybe it is promotion, maybe it's some sort of internal transfer, and being able to share it. It's probably most likely going to be the contribution section and the responsibility section.
Great. All right. I have another one here. So you spoke a lot about, taking a new approach to your job search, really, and it got some of our members or people on the line with us thinking that maybe a lot of hiring managers are not used to receiving applications from people who are 70% qualified. They might be more used to getting people who are 100% qualified. So how do you overcome, during the talk with a prospective employer, the gaps that you may have in the requirements?
Yeah, this is something that all my clients ask me, and I know it creates a bit of anxiety for a lot of people, and understandably. As I mentioned before, the reason I recommend not applying for those jobs is because they are going to pass you right by. The good news is only 3% of people who are hired from online applications. The vast majority of hires are made through referrals. Across the board, it's about 40%, 42%, but at smaller companies, it tends to be about 70% of hires are referrals. So if you think about it that way, you are going to be going and talking to people, either getting introductions to people at companies you're interested in, and getting to know more about what that company's challenges are, what are they looking for, and then how would you approach it, and what are you bringing to the table. And I actually think that most people relate to wanting to grow in their careers and not to stagnate. Like, actually, no one really wants to be 100% qualified for their job. That's a comfort zone. And after a while, and not even a very long while, like a year or less, it gets stale and it gets boring. So I do think it is up to the individual to help remind people, potential employers and people working at companies you're excited about, that it's worth taking a risk on that 30%. And it is up to the job candidate to be able to help them see how their talents will bridge that gap, even if the skills, experience, and knowledge aren't quite there yet. Everyone on this call is super smart. You guys are so creative and resourceful. You will figure it out. You need to express the talents, the things that are going to make it easy for you to figure it out and flourish and shine in that job. So, I would really recommend spending a little time understanding your talents if you're not clear on them.
Okay, thanks. Another question here. How do you build the confidence to go after your ideal job? We're very excited, of course, about the potential role, but how do you address the doubt?
There's always going to be some doubt, but if you have written up your ideal job description, you just got to keep focusing on it, keep picturing you actually getting that job, keep telling everybody what you're looking for. And one big mistake I see people make in their job search is they say, oh, I've got to treat it like a full-time job. I've really got to apply myself. And I think that's a load of crap. I don't think anybody can do a job search 100% of the time. It's really about kind of like bite-sized pieces, like even spending 30 minutes or maybe an hour a day doing something towards your job search, reaching out to 3 people and sending them a thoughtful email about the advice that you would like to get from them, and that you're looking for this type of thing, and can you grab coffee? Send out 3 of those emails in a day, you're done for the day. Go enjoy yourself doing something else that feels good. Maybe the next day is like, I'm going to research 5 new companies for 1 hour, and then the next day is going to be like seeing who I know in my network that might be connected and ask for introductions or get a conversation going. But you just keep taking one step after another and see what doors start to open. There are ebbs and flows with any job search, and it doesn't really matter if you have an ideal job description written or not. It's going to happen. There might feel like there's nothing going on for a little bit, and then all of a sudden there'll be a flood, and it does happen. So I think it's just reminding yourself that you know what you want, keep putting it out there, keep staying focused on it, and ride out the ebbs and flows. It will come.
Thank you. Okay. Could you maybe talk about, I believe it was at the very beginning of the presentation, you kind of talked about how you discovered this process and really applied it for one of your first interviews with Salesforce, I believe you had mentioned. Could you kind of talk about how that interview went down and provide a little more insight?
That question.
Just a little more
Sorry,
flavor.
was there another part of that?
No, just provide a little more flavor in how you were really able to guide the interview to get that position nailed down.
Well, there's an interesting element to this, in that I initially wasn't that worried whether I was going to be considered for the job or not. Like, I had a little bit of a laissez-faire attitude, like, I'll see what's going on. And it was a senior manager position that didn't have any direct reports, and it was, really helping to figure out how they could scale their recruiting operations. You know, as you probably all know, Salesforce has been growing like a weed over the last several years. And when they were talking to me, they had some pretty like slow, you know, kind of difficult recruiting processes that were not going to scale if they wanted to grow at the speed that they desired. And so I initially like just had a coffee chat with the head of the recruitment department, and I just asked a ton of questions. I'm like, what's going on for your company, and what problems are you facing, and what challenges are you trying to solve? And then, you know, tell me a little bit more about the person that, you know, the role that this person would take on. And I very quickly saw that it was a very limited in scope role, and there was so much more to do. And the role that they were pitching to me, I'd kind of done before. It wasn't as interesting. I wanted to manage a team. I knew that without a shadow of a doubt. I love developing teams and cultivating potential. And so leaving Google to go be an individual contributor just wasn't interesting. I was very blunt about it. I said, I want to manage a team, and I also probably don't want to leave Google without probably going to director level. Like, only going to leave Google once. It's got to be for something pretty spectacular. And I kind of laid out, like, here's what I would want to see in this role, that and how I think I could really make a difference if I was allowed to take on these areas and at a different level. And hey, if that sounds interesting to you, and you decide to change the role up a bit, rescope it, give me a call. Like 3 days later, they call me back. They're like, okay, we like all your suggestions. Do you want to come in and formally interview now? And so that's what I did. And the role got completely rescoped. And it was really because I was strategizing with them. I was working with them to help them see how they could actually even approach it in a smarter way, and then who would be a better candidate to fill that job than the person that helped them see it. And that is the beauty of really knowing what you want and articulating and asking for it. Like, I thought it was pretty brazen and bold of me, and I had never done it before. I'd never been that bold. And I was really floored when they said yes. And it was a real light bulb moment for me.
Thank you. All right, we've got another question here. And this is somebody who is interested in finding a job in an emerging industry where the current jobs are not very clearly defined. How would you recommend in that case creating your ideal job description?
Well, it's not really about what they think they want or don't know what they want. The reason you want to create your ideal job description is so you can come in and help them see what they want. Help them figure out how to take out some of the ambiguity, and you can help put in some of the clarity on, you know, how you would approach it, what you would like to do, what kind of challenges you would like to take on, and how that would affect their business. So that's an even more important, I mean, sorry, let me back up. What I'm trying to say is, if that is your situation, having an ideal job description will be so amazing for you. You will not be like other candidates that are trying to squeeze themselves into a totally ill-defined job. They don't even know what they're squeezing themselves into. When you have written your ideal job description, you can go in and create it with them. And like my experience, who would be a better candidate than the one that helped them create it? No one. You're the ideal candidate.
All right, thanks. We have another question here. At different stages of one's career, people have different career aspirations at various points. Do you recommend creating multiple ideal job descriptions, or do you think having one central focused job description is necessary?
Beautiful question. I don't think it's very advantageous to have two different ideal job descriptions at the same time. However, where it could be useful is to do both of them and see which one is really kind of more compelling, and which one do you get more excited about. And that may tell you exactly which direction you really should take your career next. And I would recommend doing this exercise at any point in your career where you're starting to feel like you're in that neutral zone again, or where you're getting into your comfort zone of, I'm the go-to expert, and I need to get back to like more of a beginner mindset again so that I can be stretched to my growing edge. Then it's like, oop, time to do another ideal job description and pull out this worksheet again and take another go at it. So it may even be like every year or every couple of years. It's kind of like a new wave approach to doing goal setting around where do you want to be in 3 years. But this one, I really think it's more about where do you want to be in 6 months to a year, so that you can see it more tangibly, you can really feel it, and it feels like it's coming soon, not this like far off in the distance dream job.
All right, thank you, Kelly. So we're running a little bit low on time. So before we end today, could you provide our audience with means that they can communicate with you? We do have kellystruder.com, and you can find out more about her ideal JD, as you can see by that link there. But is there any other way that they can reach out with you?
Sure, yeah, I didn't provide my email address on here, but you can go to my website and there's a contact page. You can always drop me a line that way, and I would be happy to get back to you and hear from you. Also, if you want to schedule a consultation with me to talk about working one-on-one, you can also do that through my website, through the contact page, and I would love to set up time to chat with you.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Kelly, and thank you to everybody who joined us today. So we're going to end there. Again, check out kellystudio.com to get more information, and we look forward to seeing everybody on the next webinar.
Thank you so much. It's been my pleasure.